The windshield wipers squeaked back and forth, fighting against the heavy Oregon rain. Emma Harper gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white as she navigated the dark country road. Her blue scrub still carried the antiseptic smell of the clinic, a reminder of the 12-hour shift she'd just finished. Almost home, she whispered to herself, thinking of Nathan. He'd probably be up writing in his journal, waiting for her like he always did on her late nights. A small smile crossed her tired face as she imagined him at the kitchen table, hunched over his notebook. The heater hummed, barely keeping up with the cold seeping through the windows. Emma glanced at the dashboard clock. 11:47 p.m. Her mind wandered to the stack of bills waiting on her desk at home. The clinic paid well enough, but raising a teenage son alone wasn't easy. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the empty road ahead. The thunder that followed was deafening, making her jump slightly in her seat. The rain grew heavier, drumming against the roof of her old Honda Civic. Before you continue listening, please let me know where in the world are you watching from today. Now, back to the story. As she rounded a bend in the road, her headlights swept across something that made her heart skip a beat. A large mass lay motionless on the shoulder of the road. At first, she thought it might be a deer, but as she slowed down, she realized it was a person. "Oh my God!" Emma gasped, pulling over to the side of the road. Her hands trembled as she put the car in park and turned on her hazard lights. The rational part of her brain screamed that this could be dangerous, that she should call the police first, but her instincts as a nurse took over. Grabbing her emergency flashlight from the glove compartment, Emma stepped out into the rain. The wind whipped at her scrubs, instantly soaking her to the skin. She approached the figure cautiously, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. It was a man, and he was huge. He lay face down in the mud, wearing a leather vest covered in patches. His arms were covered in tattoos, visible even through the rain and dirt. Blood mixed with rainwater around his head. Emma knelt beside him, checking for a pulse. It was there, but weak and thready. When she gently turned his head to the side, she saw his face was covered in cuts and bruises. His features were rough, weathered, and somehow dangerous even in unconsciousness. "Sir, can you hear me?" she called out, but there was no response. The man's breathing was shallow and labored. Looking at his vest in the flashlight beam, Emma's blood ran cold. The patches weren't just any patches. They were Iron Brotherhood insignia. She knew what that meant. This man was part of one of the most notorious motorcycle gangs in the country. For a moment, she hesitated. Getting involved with the Iron Brotherhood could mean trouble. Serious trouble. But as she watched him lying there in the rain, she knew she couldn't leave him to die. With strength she didn't know she possessed, Emma managed to drag the unconscious man toward her car. His boots left trails in the mud as she pulled him inch by inch. By the time she got him to the car, her back was screaming in protest. It took all her remaining energy to maneuver him into the passenger seat. As she climbed back behind the wheel, rain dripping from her hair, she looked at his face in the dim light of the car. His features were hard, marked by years of a life she couldn't imagine. Fresh blood trickled from a gash on his forehead. Emma's hands shook as she put the car in drive. What kind of trouble had she just invited into her life? But as she pulled back onto the road heading for home, she set her jaw with determination. Whatever happened next, she couldn't have left him there to die. That wasn't who she was. Emma pulled into her driveway, the headlights illuminating the peeling paint of her modest one-story house. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone, quickly dialing Maria's number. After 3 rings, her friend's sleepy voice answered. "Maria, I need your advice." Emma whispered, glancing at the unconscious man beside her. I found someone hurt on the road. He's in bad shape, but she swallowed hard. He's wearing Iron Brotherhood colors. Are you crazy? Maria's voice shot up an octave. Emma, you need to call the police. He could die before they get here. Emma watched the slow rise and fall of the man's chest. I can't just let that happen. Listen to me, Maria's voice softened. I know you want to help. It's who you are, but these people are dangerous. If you do this, be careful. Really careful. Emma nodded, even though Maria couldn't see her. I will. Nathan is at home. I'll make sure he stays in his room. Call me if you need anything. I mean it. Anytime. After hanging up, Emma took a deep breath and got out of the car. The rain had settled into a light drizzle as she hurried to unlock her front door. Through the living room window, she could see Nathan at the kitchen table. Just as she'd imagined, bent over his writing. She opened the door and called out, Nathan, honey, I need you to go to your room and stay there. Please don't ask questions right now. Nathan appeared in the doorway, his teenage face scrunched with concern. Mom, what's wrong? I'll explain later. Just trust me, okay? Something in her voice must have convinced him because he nodded and disappeared down the hallway. Emma heard his bedroom door close. Returning to the car, she struggled to move the unconscious man. He had to weigh at least twice what she did. Somehow, she managed to drag him across the driveway and through her front door, her muscles screaming in protest. In the bright light of her living room, she could finally see the full extent of his injuries. His face was a mass of cuts and bruises, and blood matted his gray-streaked hair. The leather vest he wore was torn, revealing more bruising underneath. Emma's hands moved automatically, falling into the familiar routine of patient assessment. She checked his pupils with a pen light, uneven dilation, suggesting a concussion. His pulse was weak but steady. Several ribs shifted under her careful touch, definitely broken. What happened to you? She murmured, cutting away his shirt to better assess the damage. Old scars crisscrossed his chest and arms, telling stories she wasn't sure she wanted to know. She retrieved her well-stocked medical kit from the bathroom and set to work. First, she cleaned the head wound, revealing a nasty gash that needed stitches. Her hands were steady now, focused on the task. This was what she knew, helping people, fixing what was broken. Emma worked methodically, cleaning and bandaging each injury she found. She set up an 4-line with fluids, something she kept on hand for emergencies, and carefully monitored his breathing. The man remained unconscious throughout her ministrations, occasionally groaning, but never waking. After what felt like hours, she'd done all she could. She covered him with a blanket and sat back in her armchair, watching his chest rise and fall. The clock on the wall read 2:30 a.m. outside. The rain had stopped, leaving an eerie silence. Emma hugged herself, reality setting in. She'd brought an Iron Brotherhood member into her home where her son slept just down the hall. What if he didn't make it through the night? What if he did? Either way, she was now involved in something much bigger than herself. A soft groan broke the pre-dawn silence. Emma jerked awake in her armchair, her neck stiff from the awkward position. The man on her couch stirred, his large frame shifting beneath the blanket she draped over him. His eyes flickered open, revealing dark brown irises clouded with confusion. He tried to sit up, but winced, one hand moving to his bandaged ribs. Emma leaned forward, keeping her movement slow and deliberate. "Try not to move too much," she said in the gentle voice she used with her patients. You've got 3 broken ribs and a concussion. His eyes darted around the room, taking in the floral wallpaper, the family photos on the walls, and the medical supplies scattered on the coffee table. His expression darkened with suspicion. Where am I? His voice was rough, barely more than a whisper. Emma reached for a glass of water she'd kept ready. You're in my home. I found you unconscious on Davidson's Road about 5 hours ago. You were badly hurt. She held out the water. Small sips, please. He studied her face for a long moment before accepting the glass. His hands were massive compared to hers, covered in faded tattoos and old scars. Despite his obvious weakness, she could feel the latent strength in them as their fingers briefly touched. You brought me here. He took a careful sip, then another. Why? I'm a nurse. I couldn't just leave you there. Emma sat back in her chair, maintaining a careful distance. I'm Emma Harper. He handed the glass back to her. Marcus, some people call me Bear. His eyes narrowed. You saw what I was wearing and still helped. Emma nodded. You needed help. That's all that mattered. Marcus tried to sit up again, more slowly this time. Emma moved to adjust the pillows behind him, noticing how he tensed at her proximity. When he was settled, he looked down at his bandaged chest and the 4 in his arm. You did all this. There was a note of surprise in his voice. Yes, the cuts weren't too deep, but you lost a lot of blood. The ribs will take time to heal. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. Do you remember what happened to you? Marcus's brow furrowed. It's fuzzy. Was riding my bike. He shook his head and immediately regretted it, judging by his grimace. Can't remember much else. He looked at her again, his expression unreadable. You should have called the cops or left me there helping someone like me. He let out a heavy breath. You have no idea what you've done, lady. Emma straightened in her chair. What I've done is save a life. That's what I do. Now you need to rest until you're stronger. To her surprise, a ghost of a smile crossed his face. Yes, ma'am, he murmured, already sinking back against the pillows, his eyes growing heavy. Emma watched as he drifted off again, his words echoing in her mind. There was something ominous about them, but she pushed the thought away. Whatever consequences came from this night, she knew she'd made the right choice. The morning sun streamed through Emma's kitchen window as she whisked eggs in a bowl. The events of last night felt almost dreamlike, but the steady breathing of the wounded man on her couch was very real. Nathan had already left for school after promising to keep quiet about their unusual house guest. The sharp rap at the door made her jump, egg mixture sloshing against the bowl's sides. Emma set it down, wiping her hands on her apron. Through the window, she caught sight of several motorcycles parked in her driveway. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she approached the door. Taking a deep breath, she opened it to find 5 men in leather jackets standing on her porch. The Iron Brotherhood patches on their backs confirmed her suspicions about Marcus's identity. The largest of them, a man with salt and pepper hair and a thick beard, spoke first. We're looking for Marcus Stone. His voice was gruff, his eyes hard. Word is he's here. Emma straightened her spine, though she barely came up to their shoulders. He is. I found him injured last night and brought him here to help him. Another man, younger with tattoos crawling up his neck, pushed forward. You expect us to believe you just happened to find him and decided to play nurse. I am a nurse, Emma replied firmly. And yes, that's exactly what happened. He had broken ribs and was bleeding badly. He needed help. The men exchanged glances. A third one, wearing dark sunglasses despite the early hour, crossed his arms. "Let us see him." Emma planted herself more firmly in the doorway. "He's resting. He needs time to heal, and I won't have you disturbing him." "Listen, lady," the younger one started. But an older man with weathered features and kind eyes stepped forward, raising his hand to silence his companion. "I'm Vincent," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Marcus is our brother. We need to know he's okay." Emma studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. "He's stable now, but he was in bad shape when I found him. 3 broken ribs, a concussion, and multiple lacerations. I used my medical training to treat him, and he's going to need time to recover." The men fell silent, processing this information. Emma continued, her voice steady and professional. "I understand you are concerned about him, but I won't have anyone causing trouble in my home. I saved his life because it was the right thing to do, and I expect some basic respect in return." Vincent's expression softened slightly. He glanced at his companions, then back to Emma. "You've got guts, ma'am. Not many people would help one of us, let alone stand up to us afterward." He extended his hand. "Thank you for saving our brother." Emma accepted the handshake, noting the firm but not threatening grip. The other men remained tense, clearly unsure about the situation. "We'll be back to check on him," Vincent said, stepping back. "And just so you know, we don't forget this kind of kindness." The younger man cleared his throat. "Yeah, you'll be seeing us again." Emma watched as they turned and walked back to their motorcycles, their leather jackets gleaming in the morning sun. Only when the rumble of their engines faded into the distance did she allow her shoulders to relax, closing the door with trembling hands. Emma stood in the cereal aisle of Bradley's grocery, reaching for Nathan's favorite breakfast food when she noticed Mrs. Carlson whispering to another customer while pointing in her direction. It had been like this all day. Sideways glances, hushed conversations, and people suddenly finding reasons to be elsewhere when she approached. "Did you really have Iron Brotherhood at your house this morning?" Danny, the teenage bag boy, blurted out as he restocked shelves nearby. Emma sighed, placing the cereal box in her cart. "News travels fast in this town. My mom said she saw their motorcycles in your driveway," Danny continued, eyes wide with curiosity. "Said there were at least 5 of them." Before Emma could respond, Maria, her closest friend, rushed up to her, concern etched across her face. "Emma, I've been trying to call you all morning. Are you okay? What happened?" "I'm fine, Maria," Emma assured her, conscious of Danny hanging on every word. "Let's talk somewhere else." They moved to the less crowded produce section where Maria grabbed Emma's arm. "First you call me about finding an injured man and now I hear the Iron Brotherhood showed up at your door. What have you gotten yourself into?" Emma carefully selected some apples trying to maintain an air of normality. "The man I helped turns out he's one of them. His friends came to check on him. That's all. That's all." Maria's voice rose slightly. "Emma, these aren't just some rough-looking bikers. They're dangerous. They were actually quite respectful." Emma defended, though she couldn't completely dismiss Maria's concerns. As they walked through the store, Emma noticed more whispers and stares. Mrs. Richardson, who usually chatted with her about garden tips, suddenly became very interested in comparing pasta brands. Mr. Cooper, her next-door neighbor, practically sprinted down another aisle when he saw her coming. After finishing her shopping, Emma drove to pick up Nathan from school. She found him sitting alone on the steps, his shoulders hunched. "Hey, sweetie," she called out. How was your day? Nathan threw his backpack in the back seat and slumped into the passenger side. Everyone's talking about us, Mom. Did you know Kevin Miller's dad said we're harboring criminals? Emma's hands tightened on the steering wheel. We're not harboring anyone. We helped someone who was hurt. That's what nurses do. But they're Iron Brotherhood, Mom, Nathan exclaimed. Even my teachers were acting weird. Mrs. Anderson kept giving me these concerned looks all through English class. Back home, Emma prepared dinner while Nathan sat at the kitchen counter, pushing his homework around without really doing it. The man they'd helped, Marcus, had been picked up by his friends earlier that day, leaving them alone to deal with the aftermath of their brief visit. Mom. Nathan's voice was quiet. What's going to happen now? Emma set down the knife she'd been using to chop vegetables and walked over to her son. She pulled him into a hug, feeling his tension. We'll be okay, Nathan. We haven't done anything wrong. But everyone's treating us differently, he mumbled into her shoulder. Emma pulled back to look at him. People are afraid of what they don't understand. We helped someone who needed help. That's all there is to it. They sat together at the kitchen table. The setting sun casting long shadows through the windows. Emma watched her son pick at his food, knowing he was still worried. She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Everything will be okay, she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. But as she looked around their quiet home, she couldn't help but wonder what changes their act of kindness might bring to their peaceful lives. The morning sunlight streamed through Emma's living room windows as she changed Marcus's bandages. His wounds were healing well, though dark bruises still painted his muscular frame. He winced slightly as she cleaned a particularly deep cut on his shoulder. Sorry, Emma said softly. This one's still pretty tender. Don't apologize, Marcus replied, his deep voice growly but gentle. You've done more for me than anyone has in years. Emma worked in silence for a moment, carefully applying fresh gauze. Can I ask what happened that night? How you ended up on the side of the road? Marcus's jaw tightened, but his eyes held a weariness that made him seem less intimidating. Some people don't take kindly to someone trying to leave the life behind. You were trying to leave the Iron Brotherhood. Emma's hands paused in their work. He nodded slowly. 25 years is a long time to be part of something. Started when I was just a kid, 18. Angry at the world, looking for somewhere to belong. His fingers traced one of his tattoos absently. The club became my family. Emma settled into the armchair across from him, sensing he needed to talk. But something changed. Everything changes, he said, his voice dropping lower. Started seeing things different. The violence, the feuds, it all started feeling hollow. He met her eyes. Gets tired living with that much anger. Emma thought about that as she prepared his medication. Must be hard walking away from the only family you've known. They're not all bad people, Marcus said, accepting the pills and water she offered. Most joined like I did, looking for brotherhood, purpose. Some lost their way. Others, like Vincent, they remember what it's meant to be about. Loyalty, respect. Is that why they came to check on you? Yeah. He shifted carefully on the couch. In their own way, they're worried, but they're also sending a message, letting me know they're watching. Emma absorbed this information, trying to reconcile the dangerous reputation of the Iron Brotherhood with the complex man before her. She saw how his tough exterior softened when he spoke about his past, noticed the regret in his eyes when he mentioned the violence. My son, Nathan, she said, gathering her medical supplies. He wants to be a writer. Says he wants to tell stories about real people, not just heroes and villains. A small smile tugged at Marcus's lips. Smart kid. World's not black and white like people think. They fell into comfortable silence as Emma finished her tasks. Marcus's presence, which had initially filled her with fear, now felt less threatening. She still maintained her caution. Years of street wisdom had taught him to move carefully, even while injured, and his eyes constantly scanned his surroundings out of habit. Through the window, Emma spotted a motorcycle cruising slowly past her house. Another reminder that they were being watched, but the riders kept their distance, respecting the space needed for Marcus's recovery. As she organized her medical supplies, Emma found herself studying Marcus's profile. The hardened biker, who had struck fear into her heart just days ago, now seemed more human. Wounded not just in body, but in spirit, carrying the weight of choices made and paths taken. While she remained cautious, she couldn't help but feel drawn to understand more about this complex man who had unexpectedly entered her life. Emma stood at her kitchen counter, preparing lunch for herself and Marcus. The rhythmic sound of chopping vegetables filled the quiet space as she watched him through the window, his massive frame moving carefully around her front yard. Despite his injuries, he'd insisted on being useful. "You've done enough sitting around," he'd said that morning, noting the broken porch steps. "Let me earn my keep." She'd protested at first, worried about his wounds reopening, but his determined expression told her it wasn't worth arguing. Now watching him work, she realized maybe he needed this, needed to feel useful after days of being helpless. Emma assembled the sandwiches, adding extra turkey to Marcus's. She'd noticed how much he ate, his appetite returning as he healed. The morning sun caught his tattoos as he worked, and she found herself studying them. They weren't just random designs. Each seemed to tell a story, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know what they meant. Carrying the plates outside, she called out, "Lunch break." Marcus straightened up slowly, careful not to strain his healing ribs. "You didn't have to," he said, but his eyes lit up at the sight of food. "Can't have you passing out from hunger on my front lawn," she replied, settling onto the porch swing. "The neighbors are already talking enough as it is." A ghost of a smile crossed his face as he joined her, keeping a respectful distance. "Sorry about that. Didn't mean to cause trouble." "I'm used to trouble," Emma said, thinking of her years as a single mom, though usually not quite this dramatic. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, watching cars pass by. Some slowed down to stare, but Marcus seemed not to notice. Or maybe he was just used to it. "These steps were worse than they looked," he said between bites. "Wood's all rotted underneath. I can replace the whole thing if you want. Make it safer." Emma glanced at the half-dismantled steps. "You don't have to do that. I want to." His voice was gruff but sincere. "Been thinking about what you did for me. Could have left me there on that road. Most people would have." "I'm a nurse," she said simply. "It's what I do." Marcus shook his head. "Nah, it's more than that. You took a risk bringing me here, keeping me safe. That's not just being a nurse. That's being a good person." Emma felt her cheeks warm at the unexpected praise. She watched as he carefully gathered their empty plates, his movements measured and gentle despite his size. For someone with such a fearsome reputation, he showed surprising consideration in small ways, wiping his boots before entering her house, speaking softly around Nathan, always asking before touching anything in her home. After lunch, Marcus returned to work on the steps. Emma cleaned up inside, stealing glances through the window. She observed how he handled the tools with precision, taking care to make each cut exact. His face held intense concentration as he measured twice before making any changes. A memory surfaced of her first impression of him. Bloody, unconscious, terrifying. Now watching him meticulously repair her porch steps in the afternoon sun. That image seemed at odds with the man before her. His powerful hands, capable of violence she could only imagine, were currently being used to make her home safer. Through the window, Emma continued to observe him work, struck by the contrast between his intimidating appearance and the careful way he handled each task. Despite everything she knew about his past, about who he was supposed to be, she couldn't reconcile that image with the man who was now fixing her steps with such patient attention to detail. The doorbell rang just as Emma was folding laundry. Nathan, who had been doing homework at the kitchen table, looked up with concern. Through the window, they could see a motorcycle parked in their driveway. "I'll get it," Emma said, patting Nathan's shoulder reassuringly. She opened the door to find Vincent, his weathered face breaking into a friendly smile. "Morning, Emma," he said, removing his leather riding gloves. "Hope I'm not interrupting anything." Emma shook her head, stepping aside to let him in. "No, just catching up on housework. Marcus is out back working on the fence." "Actually," Vincent said, "I came to talk to you." He nodded at Nathan. "Hey, kid." Nathan gave a small wave, but kept his distance, watching the exchange with careful eyes. Emma led Vincent to the living room where he settled into an armchair, looking oddly out of place with his leather vest and tattoos against her floral upholstery. "How's our boy doing?" Vincent asked, his eyes scanning the room. "Better every day," Emma replied. "The wounds are healing well and he's getting stronger." Vincent nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Good. Good. Listen, Emma. There's something we need to discuss." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "What you did for Marcus, that means something to us. The Brotherhood, we take care of our own. And now, well, you're part of that circle." Emma felt her stomach tighten. "I appreciate that, but let me finish." Vincent said gently. "This isn't a threat. It's a promise. If you ever need anything, and I mean anything, you call us. We'll be there." He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a business card with a phone number scrolled on it. "Day or night?" Emma stared at the card, but didn't take it. "I was just doing my job, Vincent. I'm a nurse. I help people who are hurt. But you didn't have to bring him home. Didn't have to risk your safety or your boys'." Vincent's eyes flickered to Nathan, who was pretending not to listen. "That's what makes it different." Emma stood up, crossing her arms. "I appreciate what you're saying, but I don't want to be involved in your world. I helped Marcus because it was the right thing to do, not because I wanted anything in return." "That's exactly why we're offering," Vincent said, still holding out the card. "Good people are hard to find, Emma. And good people deserve protection." "We don't need protection," Emma said firmly. "What we need is to get back to our normal life once Marcus is better. That's all." Vincent stood slowly, tucking the card back into his pocket. His expression was kind, but serious. "Sometimes we don't get to choose when we need help, but I respect your wishes." He headed toward the door, then paused. "Just remember what I said. The offer stands whether you want it or not." Emma watched him leave, her arms still crossed tightly over her chest. Through the window, she could see Marcus in the backyard, hammering away at the broken fence. The sound of Vincent's motorcycle starting up filled the air and then faded away. Nathan appeared beside her. "Mom, are you okay?" Emma pulled her son close, kissing the top of his head. "I'm fine, sweetie." But Vincent's words echoed in her mind, making her wonder if she'd stepped into something far bigger than she'd realized. Emma sat in her favorite armchair, trying to focus on her book. The house was quiet. Nathan had gone to bed an hour ago, and Marcus was in the guest room downstairs. The only sound was the gentle ticking of the wall clock and the occasional rustle of pages. A scratching noise from outside made her pause. She lowered her book, listening intently. The sound came again, like branches scraping against the side of the house, but there weren't any trees close enough to touch the walls. Just the wind, she whispered to herself, though her heart had started beating faster. She'd been jumpy ever since Vincent's visit earlier that day. The porch light suddenly went dark. Emma sat up straight, her book forgotten in her lap. That light was new. She'd just changed the bulb last week. Through the living room window, she could make out a dark shape moving at the edge of her property, barely visible in the glow from the street lamp. Her hands trembled as she set her book aside and stood up. The figure disappeared behind her garden shed, then reappeared closer to the house. Emma's throat went dry. She thought about waking Nathan, but didn't want to frighten him unnecessarily. The sound of breaking glass shattered the silence. Emma jumped back with a startled cry as a rock crashed through her front window, sending shards of glass across the carpet. Cold night air rushed in through the jagged hole. "Mom!" Nathan called from upstairs, his voice thick with sleep and fear. "Stay in your room," Emma shouted back. She fumbled for her phone with shaking hands, nearly dropping it twice before managing to dial 911. "911, what's your emergency?" "Someone's outside my house," Emma whispered, backing away from the windows. "They just threw a rock through my window. I'm at 1247, Oakwood Street. Are you alone in the house?" "No, my son is upstairs." And she hesitated, unsure whether to mention Marcus. "Please hurry." Heavy footsteps thundered down the hallway. Marcus had heard the commotion. He appeared in the living room doorway, his expression dark. "What happened?" Emma pointed to the broken window, still holding the phone to her ear. "Someone's out there." Marcus moved to the window, carefully avoiding the glass. His massive frame blocked most of the view as he peered out into the darkness. "I don't see anyone now." The dispatcher's voice crackled through the phone. "Officers are on their way. Stay on the line with me until they arrive." It felt like hours, but was probably only minutes before red and blue lights flooded the street. 2 police cars pulled up and officers searched the property with flashlights. They found footprints in the soft earth beneath the broken window, but nothing else. "We'll increase patrols in the area," one officer assured her as he finished taking her statement. But without more to go on, Emma nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. The officers left and she stood in her living room, staring at the plywood Marcus had nailed over the broken window. Nathan had finally come downstairs and sat huddled on the couch, looking small and scared. The whole incident left her feeling exposed and vulnerable. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Tomorrow, she would have to talk to Marcus about what happened. Maybe he would know who might have done this or why. But for now, all she could do was try to get through the night, wondering if the dark figure would return. The morning sun cast long shadows across Emma's front porch as she sat in her old wooden rocking chair, a cup of coffee growing cold in her hands. Marcus settled his large frame into the chair beside her, the wood creaking under his weight. The street was quiet, peaceful, a stark contrast to last night's events. "I need to tell you something," Marcus said, his voice rough and low. He stared straight ahead, his fingers drumming nervously on the armrest. About who I am, what I've done. Emma turned to look at him, noting the tension in his jaw and the way his shoulders hunched forward. She waited, giving him space to continue. I wasn't just any member of the Iron Brotherhood, he began. I was what they call an enforcer. When people crossed us, owed us money, or disrespected the club. He paused, swallowing hard. I was the one they sent to handle it. A chill ran down Emma's spine despite the warm morning sun. She gripped her coffee cup tighter, but remained silent. Did things I'm not proud of. Things that keep me up at night. Marcus's eyes grew distant. There was this one time. This guy, he had a family. Kids about Nathan's age. He owed the club money. I didn't hurt him, but I scared him bad enough that his kids saw. He shook his head. The look in their eyes. I'll never forget it. Emma watched as Marcus's hands trembled slightly. He clenched them into fists to steady them. That was the beginning of the end for me. Started questioning everything. The violence, the fear we spread. It wasn't what I wanted anymore. But leaving isn't simple. The club, their family, good and bad. Is that why you were attacked that night? Emma asked softly. Part of it. Been trying to distance myself, do things different. Some people don't like that. He turned to face her finally. His eyes filled with a pain that made Emma's heart ache. I've got blood on my hands, Emma. Can't wash it off no matter how hard I try. I started young. Thought I was invincible. The club gave me a sense of belonging I never had before. But now, he gestured vaguely at nothing. Now I'm just tired. Tired of the violence. Tired of watching over my shoulder. Tired of being someone I don't want to be anymore. Emma set her coffee cup down on the small table between them. She studied Marcus's face, the deep lines around his eyes, the way his mouth turned down at the corners, the weight of regret evident in every feature. The worst part is, he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. I can't take any of it back. Can't make it right. Those kids I scared, they're grown now, but they probably still have nightmares about me. The people I hurt, they're still hurting. That's what keeps me up at night, knowing I can't undo what I've done. As Emma listened, she felt her perception of Marcus shifting. The scary biker who'd first awakened on her couch was transforming before her eyes into something more complex. A man haunted by his past, struggling to find redemption. She saw beyond the tattoos and the gruff exterior to the pain that lived in his eyes, the regret that weighed down his broad shoulders. His words hung in the morning air between them, heavy with truth and remorse. Emma found herself understanding, truly understanding, for the first time just how deep his struggles ran. This wasn't just a man who had made bad choices. This was someone fighting a battle with his own past, trying to find a way forward while carrying the weight of actions he could never take back. Emma watched from behind the cafe's window as 3 motorcycles rumbled down Riverside Avenue, their riders wearing black leather jackets with a crimson scorpion emblem on the back. The sight made her stomach clench. These weren't Iron Brotherhood. They were something else entirely. Those are Red Scorpions, Linda, the cafe owner, whispered as she wiped down the counter. Bad news, worse than the Brotherhood, if you can believe it. Throughout the week, more Red Scorpions filtered into town. They lounged outside the local bars, their presence making everyone uneasy. Stories spread quickly. A shopkeeper's windows smashed, threatening notes left on car windshields, loud arguments in the street late at night. Emma tried to maintain her normal routine, but fear crept in. She noticed the way people crossed the street to avoid the bikers, how the usual bustle of downtown had quieted to nervous whispers. Even Nathan seemed affected, choosing to stay home rather than hang out with his friends at the park. One evening, while closing up the clinic, Emma found her car's tires slashed. A crude scorpion had been scratched into the driver's side door. Her hands shook as she called for a ride. "This has to stop," she told Marcus later that night, pacing her living room. "The whole town is scared. Why are they here?" Marcus stood by the window, his massive frame tense as he watched the street. "They're here because of me," he said finally, turning to face her. His expression was grim. "Got some history with their leader, Derek Crews. Bad blood from years back." Emma sank onto the couch, her legs suddenly weak. "What kind of history?" "The kind that doesn't go away." Marcus ran a hand through his graying hair. "I was different back then, Emma. Violent. Derek and we had a confrontation. He ended up in the hospital for 3 months. Lost his position in the gang because of it. And now he's back," Emma said quietly. "He's back and he's their leader now." Marcus moved to sit across from her. "They've been watching you, watching this house. They know you helped me." Emma thought about Nathan upstairs, probably pretending to do homework while actually working on his latest story. Her son, who should never have to worry about rival gang members or violence. "I won't let them hurt you or Nathan," Marcus said, his voice firm. "I'll do whatever it takes to keep you both safe." But Emma could see the worry in his eyes. The way his shoulders hunched under the weight of responsibility. This wasn't just about protection. It was about redemption, about a man trying to right his past wrongs. She felt a crushing wave of dread wash over her. "This is bigger than us, isn't it?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Marcus nodded slowly. "Derek won't stop until he gets what he wants. And what he wants is revenge." Emma looked around her living room, the familiar photos on the walls, Nathan's school awards displayed proudly on the shelf, the comfortable furniture she'd saved for months to buy. Her peaceful life seemed to be slipping away like sand through her fingers. "I'm sorry," Marcus said quietly. "I never meant for any of this to touch you or Nathan. But I promise you, Emma, I won't let them hurt either of you. Whatever it takes." The words should have been comforting. But they only made Emma's dread deepen. She could feel control of her life spiraling away, carried off by a storm of violence and old vendettas she'd never asked to be part of. The sound of motorcycles shattered the quiet afternoon. Emma rushed to her front window. Her heart pounding as 5 red scorpions pulled up in front of her house. Marcus, who had been working on her garden fence, straightened up slowly, his muscles tensing as he watched them approach. Nathan appeared beside Emma at the window. "Mom," his voice trembled slightly. "Go to your room, sweetie," she whispered, giving him a gentle push. "Lock the door." Outside, Derek Crews, the leader of the Red Scorpions, dismounted his bike. He was shorter than Marcus, but moved with the confidence of someone used to being feared. His leather jacket gleamed in the sunlight. The crimson scorpion emblem seeming to come alive with each movement. "Well, well," Derek called out, his voice carrying across the yard. "Look what we found." The mighty bear playing handyman. His followers laughed, spreading out behind him. Marcus set down his tools carefully. "You're not welcome here, Derek." "That's funny," Derek sneered, taking another step forward. "I don't remember asking for permission." His hand rested casually on his belt near a visible knife handle. Emma's fingers gripped the windowsill. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. She watched as Marcus moved to position himself between the red scorpions in her house. 3 months I spent in that hospital bed, Derek continued, his voice growing harder. 3 months wondering if I'd ever walk right again. And here you are living the quiet life, playing house with some nurse. That was a long time ago, Marcus replied evenly. Things are different now. Different? Derek spat on the ground. Nothing's different. You're still the same piece of garbage who sucker punched me and left me for dead. Only now you're hiding behind a woman's skirts. Emma couldn't stand it anymore. Despite her fear, she stepped out onto her front porch. This is private property, she called out, trying to keep her voice steady. You need to leave. Derek's eyes snapped to her, cold and calculating. Or what, sweetheart? You'll call the cops. He laughed, and the sound made Emma's skin crawl. By the time they get here, there won't be much left to report. One of Derek's men started moving toward the house, but Marcus stepped into his path. Take one more step, Marcus growled. And it'll be your last. The air crackled with tension. Emma could see Derek's men reaching for weapons while Marcus stood his ground, outnumbered, but unflinching. Her heart hammered in her chest as she thought about Nathan upstairs, probably terrified. Just then, the rumble of more motorcycles filled the air. A dozen Iron Brotherhood members led by Vincent roared around the corner. They pulled up in formation, effectively surrounding the red scorpions. Having a party without us? Vincent's deep voice carried across the yard as he dismounted. His weathered face was calm, but his eyes were hard as steel. Derek's confident smile faltered slightly as he looked at the new arrivals. The odds had shifted dramatically. This is a private conversation, Derek snarled. Not anymore, Vincent replied simply. He nodded to his men who began moving forward in a coordinated pattern. Time for you to leave, Derek, while you still can. For a moment, Derek stood his ground, his face contorted with rage. Then slowly, he backed away. This isn't over, he spat, pointing at Marcus. Not by a long shot. Emma watched as the red scorpions mounted their bikes and rode away, their engines growling in frustration. Her legs felt weak and she sank onto her porch steps, the reality of what had just happened washing over her. She looked at her peaceful front yard, now filled with leather-clad bikers, and wondered how her life had changed so dramatically. Marcus approached her, concern etched on his face. Are you okay? She nodded numbly, but they both knew it wasn't true. Nothing about this situation was okay. After the red scorpions left, Vincent and his men set up a patrol around Emma's neighborhood. The rumble of their motorcycles faded into the distance as Marcus led Emma inside. Her hands were still shaking as she sank into her favorite armchair. Nathan, she called out. You can come down now, honey. Her son appeared at the top of the stairs, his face pale but composed. He gave them a small wave before disappearing into his room again. The sound of his door closing echoed through the quiet house. Marcus pulled up a kitchen chair and sat across from Emma. His broad shoulders seemed to fill the small space. But his expression was gentle. I know you're scared, he said softly. But you don't need to be. The Brotherhood will watch over you and Nathan. Emma wrapped her arms around herself, trying to stop trembling. Watch over us like guard dogs. She shook her head. This isn't what I wanted, Marcus. I'm a nurse. I help people. I don't need motorcycle gangs having shootouts in my front yard. There wasn't any shooting, Marcus pointed out. Not this time. Emma stood up and paced the living room. But what about next time or the time after that? I saw the way Derek looked at you. He wants revenge. Marcus's jaw tightened. Derek Crews is all talk. He won't dare make a move now that the Brotherhood is involved. That's exactly my point. Emma stopped pacing and faced him. I don't want the Brotherhood involved. I don't want any of this. When I helped you that night, I was just doing what any decent person would do. I wasn't signing up for she gestured helplessly at the window where they could still hear distant motorcycles. I understand, Marcus said, his voice low and serious. But you can't just pretend this isn't happening. The Brotherhood protects their own. And like it or not, you're one of us now. Emma's eyes flashed. I am not one of you. I'm a single mother trying to raise her son in peace. I don't want to be part of your world, Marcus. I don't want Nathan growing up thinking this is normal. She walked to the window, watching as another pair of Iron Brotherhood members rode past her house. Their leather jackets gleamed in the afternoon sun. This morning, I was worried about paying bills and making sure Nathan did his homework. Now I'm worried about rival gangs and violence. How is this okay? Marcus stood and joined her at the window. It's not okay, he admitted. But it's reality. You saved my life, Emma. To the Brotherhood, that means something. They won't just walk away and leave you unprotected. I don't need their protection. Emma's voice rose in frustration. I need my life back. I need to know my son is safe. She stopped, running her hands through her hair. I need this to not be happening. Emma. Marcus's voice was firm but kind. You can't just walk away from this. Neither of us can. We're in it together now, whether you like it or not. She turned to look at him, seeing the determination in his eyes. The same eyes that had looked so lost and vulnerable when she'd first found him on that rainy night. She'd made a choice then, and now she was living with the consequences. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Riverside Avenue as Emma watched groups of Iron Brotherhood members gathering at Tommy's Diner. The usual lunch crowd had cleared out, leaving only leather-clad bikers filling the chrome and red vinyl booths. Through the large windows, she could see Vincent gesturing at something while others nodded solemnly. They're discussing security arrangements, Marcus explained, standing beside her car. He'd insisted on accompanying her to pick up some groceries, claiming it wasn't safe for her to be alone. For the whole town? Emma asked, clutching her paper grocery bag closer. For you and Nathan? Marcus's expression softened. The Brotherhood takes care of their own. But I'm not one of you, Emma protested, shifting the heavy bag in her arms. Marcus reached over and took the groceries from her. Let me explain something about the Brotherhood, he said, leading her to a bench outside the small-town bookstore. When you saved my life that night, you didn't just help a random stranger. You helped a brother. In our world, that means everything. Emma sat down, smoothing her nurse's uniform. She just finished her shift at the clinic, and her feet ached. I was just doing my job. No. Marcus shook his head. You could have left me there. Most people would have, but you didn't. He placed the grocery bag between them. In the Brotherhood, loyalty is everything. When someone shows that kind of courage and kindness to one of us, they become family. Family? Emma watched another group of bikers roll past, their engines growling. I didn't ask for this kind of family. Nobody does, Marcus said quietly. But once you're in, you're in. The Brotherhood will die to protect their own. It's not just about violence or power. It's about honor. Inside the diner, Vincent was now standing, pointing at what looked like a map spread across one of the tables. Other bikers crowded around, their faces serious. "What exactly does being family mean?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "It means you'll never have to worry about money again. Your son's college is taken care of. If anyone gives you trouble, any kind of trouble, they'll have to answer to us." Marcus's eyes met hers. "I know it's not what you wanted, but there are worse things than having a few hundred Raphael-looking guardian angels." Emma watched as an elderly couple hurried past the diner, avoiding eye contact with the bikers inside. This was her town, her normal life, transformed overnight into something unrecognizable. "The code goes both ways," Marcus continued. "We protect you, but we also expect loyalty. Not blind obedience, but respect for what we are, what we represent." "And what exactly do you represent?" Emma asked, turning to face him. "Brotherhood. Loyalty. Standing up for each other when the whole world wants to knock us down." Marcus's voice carried a hint of pride. "We're not saints, Emma. We've all done things we're not proud of. But we never forget those who help us, and we never abandon our own." Emma thought about the night she'd found Marcus, broken and bleeding on the side of the road. She thought about Nathan, about the life she'd built for them. Everything was different now, changed by that one decision to stop and help. "I can't just pretend this isn't happening, can I?" she asked, more to herself than to Marcus. "No," he replied gently. "But you don't have to face it alone." Emma watched the bikers in the diner, seeing them in a new light. Not just as dangerous men, but as people bound by their own code of honor. She might not have chosen this connection, but she was beginning to understand that it couldn't simply be undone. Nathan sat at the kitchen table, pushing his mashed potatoes around his plate with his fork. The constant rumble of motorcycles outside had become the new soundtrack of their lives. Emma noticed her son's unusual quiet. Normally, he'd be telling her about his latest story ideas or something that happened at school. "You've hardly touched your dinner," Emma said, sitting down across from him. Nathan set his fork down and looked up at her, his eyes troubled. "Mom, I saw Marcus teaching some of the younger Brotherhood members how to fight in the parking lot behind the diner today." Emma's hand tightened around her water glass. "Were you supposed to be at the diner?" "I was working on my writing. The diner's usually quiet in the afternoon." Nathan pushed his plate away. He wasn't being violent or anything. "It was more like training, but it made me think about everything that's happening." Emma waited, knowing her son needed to get something off his chest. "Marcus isn't like what I expected," Nathan continued. "He helped me with my bike chain last week, and he actually listened when I told him about my story ideas, but then I see him with the Brotherhood, and he's different. Harder somehow." "People can be complicated, honey," Emma said softly. "That's just it, Mom. I kind of like having him around. He's cool in a way." Nathan struggled with the words. "But then I remember he's Iron Brotherhood, and I get scared. Not of him exactly, but of everything that comes with it. The rival gangs, the threats, the danger." Emma reached across the table and took her son's hand. His fingers were cold despite the warm evening. "Yesterday, some kids at school were talking about how their parents won't let them hang out with me anymore." Nathan's voice cracked slightly. "They said we're trouble now because of the Brotherhood." "Oh, Nathan." Emma's heart ached for her son. "I'm so sorry. But that's not even the worst part." Nathan continued, pulling his hand back. "The weird thing is some other kids suddenly want to be my friend. Like I'm some kind of celebrity because we have bikers protecting us. They think it's exciting. He looked up at his mother, his eyes full of confusion. I don't know how to feel about any of this anymore. Emma stood up and walked around the table, pulling her son into a tight hug. He didn't resist like he usually did when she showed affection. Instead, he leaned into her embrace. Listen to me, she said firmly. Nothing about this situation is normal or fair to you, but I promise you, I will do everything in my power to protect you. We're going to get through this together. But how? Nathan's voice was muffled against her shoulder. Everything's different now. Yes, it is, Emma admitted, stroking his hair. But some things will never change. You're still my boy, and I'm still your mom. We still have each other, and that's what matters most. Nathan pulled back slightly, wiping his eyes quickly with the back of his hand. You really think we'll be okay? We will, Emma said with conviction, even as her own doubts nodded at her. We're stronger than we think, and sometimes life's biggest challenges bring unexpected blessings. Nathan nodded slowly, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. Thanks, Mom. Emma kissed the top of his head, holding him close. In that moment, she wasn't thinking about the Iron Brotherhood or Marcus or the dangers lurking outside their door. She was simply a mother trying to protect her child in a world that had suddenly become much more complicated than either of them had ever imagined. The screech of tires pierced the quiet morning. Emma rushed to her front window, her heart pounding. Across the street, her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Carlson's garden gnomes, lay scattered and broken across her lawn. 3 black motorcycles roared away, leaving tire marks on her pristine driveway. Emma grabbed her phone and dialed Mrs. Carlson's number. No answer. Throwing on her jacket, she hurried across the street, her nurse's instincts taking over. The front door hung open, swaying in the breeze. Mrs. Carlson, Emma called out, stepping carefully inside. It's Emma from across the street. A whimper came from the kitchen. Emma found Mrs. Carlson huddled in the corner, her usually perfectly styled silver hair disheveled. A broken teacup lay shattered on the floor, its contents spreading across the linoleum. They just barged in, Mrs. Carlson whispered, her voice trembling. 3 men in black leather. They asked about Marcus, about you. Tears welled up in her eyes. They said no one in this neighborhood would be safe until Marcus left town. Emma helped the elderly woman to her feet, guiding her to a kitchen chair. Did they hurt you? Mrs. Carlson shook her head. Just scared me something awful. One of them, he had a scorpion tattoo on his neck. He said to tell you that this was just the beginning. Emma's hands shook as she swept up the broken teacup. The red scorpions were escalating, targeting innocent people to get to Marcus. She pulled out her phone again, this time dialing Marcus's number. He answered on the first ring. Emma, what's wrong? The red scorpions were just here. They threatened Mrs. Carlson. Her voice cracked. They're going after my neighbors now, Marcus. A long silence followed. When Marcus spoke again, his voice was cold and hard. I'll handle this. Marcus, wait. No more waiting. He cut her off. They've crossed a line. I won't let them terrorize innocent people because of me. What are you going to do? Something I should have done weeks ago. The determination in his voice scared her. I'm going to pay them a visit. Make it clear that this town is off limits. It could be a trap, Emma protested, watching as police cars pulled up outside Mrs. Carlson's house. They're trying to provoke you. Maybe, Marcus agreed. But I can't sit back and watch them hurt people. Not because of me. Not because of what I did to help you. Emma stepped outside, watching the police officers examine the tire marks on the driveway. At least wait for backup. Talk to Vincent and the others. This isn't club business anymore, Emma. This is personal. The growl in Marcus's voice reminded her of the dangerous man she'd first met. They're targeting you and your neighbors to get to me. Well, they've got my attention now. Please be careful. Emma whispered, but Marcus had already hung up. She stood on Mrs. Carlson's porch, watching the police document the damage. In the distance, she heard the familiar rumble of Marcus's motorcycle starting up. The sound grew fainter as he rode away, heading toward what she feared was a carefully laid trap. The morning sun felt cold on her skin, as she realized this peaceful town would never be the same. The Red Scorpions had made their move, and now Marcus was riding straight into their territory, alone and angry. Emma couldn't shake the feeling that this was exactly what they wanted. The morning sun blazed overhead as Emma heard them coming. First, a distant rumble, then a deafening roar. Dozens of motorcycles flooded Riverside Avenue, their chrome pipes glinting in the harsh light. On one side, the familiar leather jackets of the Iron Brotherhood. On the other the scorpion emblems of the Red Scorpions. Their black bikes lined up like a wall of darkness. The townspeople scattered, ducking into shops and behind cars. Emma watched from the clinic window, her hands pressed against the glass. The two gangs faced each other across the width of Riverside Avenue, engines growling like caged beasts. Derek Cruz, the Red Scorpions' leader, rode forward on his massive black chopper. His scorpion tattoo twisted around his neck as he sneered at the opposing line. "Where's your boy Bear?" he called out, his voice carrying over the rumble of engines. "Too scared to face us himself." The thunder of a single motorcycle cut through the tension. Marcus appeared from a side street, his bike gleaming in the sunlight. He pulled up between the two groups, cutting an imposing figure against the backdrop of chaos. "I'm right here, Derek." Marcus's deep voice carried across the street. "Let's end this now." Emma's heart hammered in her chest as she watched Marcus dismount his bike. She grabbed her medical bag, knowing in her gut that something terrible was about to happen. Derek laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. "You've gone soft, Bear, living with that nurse playing house." He spat on the ground. "You forgot who you are." "No," Marcus replied, standing his ground. "For the first time, I know exactly who I am." The tension snapped like a rubber band. Derek lunged forward and suddenly the street erupted into chaos. Bikers clashed in a storm of leather and fists. The sound of breaking glass and metal striking metal filled the air. Emma watched in horror as Marcus fought his way through the crowd toward Derek. The Red Scorpions' leader pulled something from his jacket, metal glinting in the sun. Before anyone could react, Derek struck. Marcus stumbled backward, clutching his side. Blood seeped between his fingers, staining his white t-shirt crimson. The fighting around them slowed as people realized what had happened. Emma burst out of the clinic doors, her medical bag clutched tight. She pushed through the crowd of stunned bikers, her heart in her throat. Marcus was on his knees now, his face pale. "Get back," she shouted, dropping to Marcus's side. Her hands moved quickly, assessing the wound. The knife had struck just below his ribs. The blood flowed steady, but not spurting. A good sign, but he needed help fast. "Emma," Marcus grabbed her arm, his grip weak. "You shouldn't be here." "Shut up and let me work," she snapped, pressing gauze against the wound. Around them, the Iron Brotherhood had formed a protective circle, keeping the Red Scorpions at bay. Vincent appeared at her side, his face grim. "Ambulance is coming," he said, his eyes never leaving the crowd of red scorpions. Emma nodded, focusing on keeping pressure on the wound. Marcus's breathing was becoming labored, his skin clammy under her touch. "Stay with me," she whispered, fear clawing at her throat. "Don't you dare die on me, Marcus Stone." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Emma held Marcus's hand tight as his eyes started to flutter. The morning sun beat down on them both, turning the blood on the pavement into a dark, glistening pool. Time seemed to stretch like taffy as Emma waited, praying the ambulance would arrive in time. The ambulance's red lights cast eerie shadows across Riverside Avenue as paramedics loaded Marcus onto a stretcher. Emma climbed in beside him, her scrub stained with his blood. The doors slammed shut and the siren wailed as they sped toward the hospital. BP dropping, one paramedic called out while hooking up in 4. "We need to move fast." Emma held Marcus's hand, watching his chest rise and fall with shallow breaths. His skin had turned ashen, and his usually strong grip felt weak in hers. The morning's events played through her mind like a nightmare. The roar of motorcycles, the glint of the knife, the horror of seeing Marcus fall. At the hospital, everything became a blur of motion and urgent voices. Emma found herself pushed aside as doctors and nurses rushed Marcus into surgery. She stood in the waiting room, her legs shaking so badly she had to sit down. Blood. Marcus's blood was drying on her hands and clothes. Vincent appeared beside her, offering a cup of coffee and a clean jacket. "The red scorpions are gone," he said quietly. "Derek's been arrested. The town, well, it's pretty torn up, but people are already starting to clean up." Emma nodded numbly, unable to form words. Her phone buzzed. A text from Nathan asking if she was okay. She managed to type back that she was at the hospital, that everything would be all right, even though she wasn't sure if that was true. Hours crawled by. Other Iron Brotherhood members filtered in and out of the waiting room, their usual intimidating presence subdued by worry. Emma paced, sat, paced again. Every time the surgery doors opened, her heart jumped, but no news came. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a doctor emerged. "He's stable," she announced. "The knife missed any vital organs, but he lost a lot of blood. He's being moved to recovery now." Relief flooded through Emma so strongly, she had to grip the wall for support. Vincent steadied her with a gentle hand on her shoulder. In the recovery room, Marcus lay still and pale against white hospital sheets. Tubes and wires connected him to softly beeping machines. Emma pulled a chair close to his bed, taking his hand once again. The tough, intimidating biker looked vulnerable now, his features relaxed in unconsciousness. "I can't believe this happened," she whispered, tears finally breaking free. They rolled down her cheeks, dropping onto their joined hands. "All because I stopped to help someone that night because I couldn't just drive by." The room was quiet except for the steady beep of the heart monitor. Outside the window, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Emma thought about how much her life had changed since that rainy night when she'd found Marcus on the road. She felt a slight pressure on her hand. Looking up, she found Marcus's eyes open, focusing on her face. "You saved me," he said, his voice rough, but clear again. Emma leaned forward, squeezing his hand. "I couldn't let you die," she replied softly. "Not after everything." "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for bringing all this trouble to your door." "I'm here," she promised, wiping away tears with her free hand. "Whatever happens next, I'll be here." Marcus managed a weak smile before his eyes drifted closed again, the medication pulling him back under. Emma kept hold of his hand, watching his chest rise and fall with steady breaths. Outside the hospital room, the world felt uncertain and dangerous, but in this moment, she knew she was exactly where she needed to be. The afternoon sun filtered through Emma's living room windows, casting warm patches of light across Marcus's tired face. He sat propped up on her couch, his bandaged chest rising and falling with each careful breath. The doctor had released him earlier that morning with strict instructions for rest and recovery. Emma brought him a glass of water and his pain medication, settling into the armchair across from him. The house was quiet. Nathan was at school, and the usual rumble of motorcycles had been absent since the confrontation. "You don't have to keep taking care of me," Marcus said, his voice still rough from the hospital tubes. "I've caused you enough trouble." Emma shook her head. "That's not how this works. You're here until you're better." End of discussion. Marcus looked around the room, taking in the family photos on the walls, the worn but comfortable furniture, the peaceful normalcy of it all. His calloused fingers traced the edge of his bandage absently. "I've been thinking," he said slowly, "about everything that's happened. About who I was, who I've become." He paused, struggling to find the right words. "I've done things I'm not proud of, Emma. Things that keep me awake at night." Emma watched him, seeing the weight of regret in his eyes. The fierce biker she'd first met seemed far away from the vulnerable man before her. "The life I've led, it's all I've known for so long. The brotherhood, they became my family when I had nothing else." His voice grew quieter. "But watching you with Nathan, seeing how you live, it's made me realize what I've been missing." He shifted on the couch, wincing slightly. "I don't want this life anymore. The violence, the constant looking over my shoulder, wondering which day might be my last." His eyes met Emma's. "But I need you to understand something. No matter what changes I make, I will do whatever it takes to keep you and Nathan safe. That's not negotiable." Emma sat down her coffee cup, moved by the intensity in his voice. "Marcus, no. Let me finish," he insisted. "When you found me that night, you did more than save my life. You showed me there was another way to live. That kindness isn't weakness." He ran a hand through his graying hair. "I've been running from my past for so long, trying to prove I was tough enough, strong enough, but real strength. That's what you showed me." The clock ticked softly in the background as Emma absorbed his words. She thought about the man she'd dragged from the roadside that stormy night. How different he seemed now. "I see you," she said finally. "Not just the person you were, but the person you're trying to become. And I believe in that person." Marcus's eyes glistened with unexpected emotion. "I don't deserve your faith." "Maybe that's not for you to decide," Emma replied gently. She leaned forward, her voice firm but kind. "Change isn't easy, Marcus. But I've watched you these past weeks. I've seen how you are with Nathan, how you've protected us, how you've started to question things you never questioned before." The late afternoon light caught the silver in Marcus's beard as he nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. He saw now what Emma had known all along. That redemption wasn't about deserving it, but about choosing it day after day. "We'll figure it out," Emma said, a small smile touching her lips. "One day at a time." The spring morning brought a different kind of rumble to Emma's small town. Instead of the threatening roar of rival gangs, the sound of construction equipment filled the air. Emma stood on Riverside Avenue, watching as members of the Iron Brotherhood, now in workclothes rather than their usual leather, helped repair the damaged storefronts. Marcus directed the efforts from the sidewalk, his injured arm in a sling, but his voice strong and clear as he coordinated the work. He traded his leather vest for a plain white t-shirt, and Emma noticed how the other bikers listened to him with the same respect they'd shown during the confrontation, but now for a very different purpose. "We need those windows installed before noon," Marcus called out to a group working on the bakery. "Mrs. Foster wants to open for the afternoon crowd." His face softened as he added, "And save me one of those apple pies." Emma watched as Vincent and two other Brotherhood members carefully lifted a large pane of glass into place. The sight of these intimidating men, their tattoos visible under rolled-up sleeves, meticulously working to restore the town's beloved bakery, brought an unexpected smile to her face. "Never thought I'd see the day, Claire." The town's librarian murmured beside her. "Those men who scared us half to death are now fixing our town." Down the street, more bikers were repainting the hardware store's facade. Others repaired broken benches in the small town square. The local residents, initially wary, had begun to work alongside them, passing tools and offering water in the warming spring air. Nathan appeared with sandwiches from the diner, distributing them among the workers. Emma noticed how comfortable he seemed now, chatting easily with the bikers, who had become familiar faces in their community. One of them ruffled his hair as he passed, and Nathan grinned, no longer intimidated by their rough appearance. "The kid's got spirit," Marcus said, approaching Emma. He moved carefully, still mindful of his injuries, just like his mother. Emma watched as another group of Brotherhood members unloaded lumber from a truck. "I never expected this," she admitted. "When I found you that night, I thought I was just saving one life. I never imagined that you'd end up with a town full of reformed bikers doing community service." Marcus chuckled, then winced slightly at the movement, something like that. Emma smiled, then grew serious. "You're really doing this, aren't you? Making changes." Marcus looked out at the scene before them. "The Brotherhood has always been about brotherhood, about taking care of our own. Maybe it's time we expanded our definition of who that includes." He gestured to the town around them. "These people, your people, they're under our protection now, but not through fear, through respect." A cheer went up as the bakery's new sign was lifted into place. Mrs. Foster emerged from her shop with a tray of fresh cookies, tears in her eyes as she thanked the men who had restored her family business. The Brotherhood members, these men who had once struck fear into the town's heart, accepted her gratitude with awkward nods and shy smiles. Emma felt something shift in her chest, a warmth, a sense of possibility. The town wasn't just being rebuilt, it was being transformed. And somehow her simple act of kindness that stormy night had set it all in motion. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Emma's front porch as she brought out 2 glasses of iced tea. Marcus sat in his usual spot on the porch steps, his injured arm cradled against his chest. The sound of hammering and construction from downtown had faded, replaced by the gentle chirping of birds and the rustle of leaves in the spring breeze. Emma handed him a glass and settled beside him, careful to leave enough space between them. "The bakery looks amazing," she said. Mrs. Foster couldn't stop smiling. Marcus took a slow sip of his tea. "It's the least we could do. The damage was partly our fault." "You didn't cause it," Emma reminded him. "The Red Scorpions did." "Maybe." He stared into his glass. "But I brought that world to your doorstep the moment you found me on that road." Emma watched a pair of cardinals dart between the trees in her front yard. "I don't regret it, you know, helping you that night. Even after everything that happened. Even after everything." She turned to face him. "Look at what's happening now. The town is coming together. People who never spoke to each other before are working side by side. Marcus set his glass down carefully. "Emma, I need you to know something." His voice was quiet but firm. "What you did that night, saving my life, it didn't just heal my wounds. It showed me another way to live." Emma felt her throat tighten with emotion. "Marcus, let me finish," he said gently. "I've been in the life since I was 17. Violence, fear, power. That's all I knew. But you," he shook his head, searching for words. "You showed me what real strength looks like. Kindness without expecting anything in return. That's something I never understood before. And now, he gestured toward the town with his good arm. Now I'm done with the old life for good. I'm not saying it'll be easy. There's a lot of history there, but I'm committed to changing, to being someone different." He met her eyes, someone better. Emma studied his face, the lines etched by years of hard living, the gray threading through his beard, but most of all, the earnest look in his eyes. This wasn't the same man she'd dragged from the roadside that stormy night. This was someone who'd found his way to redemption, step by careful step. "I believe you," she said simply. "You do?" "Yes," she smiled. "I've watched you with the townspeople, with Nathan, with everyone. You're not pretending to change, Marcus. You already have." He ducked his head, and used to such direct praise. "Your faith in people, it's something else, Emma. Makes me want to live up to it." The late afternoon light painted everything in soft gold, and Emma felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. She looked at Marcus, really looked at him, and saw not the fearsome biker who'd once terrified her, but a man working hard to rebuild himself along with the town. The gratitude she felt wasn't just for his protection or help, but for showing her that people really could change when given the chance. Hope bloomed in her chest, warm and steady as the spring sunshine. Whatever came next, she knew this moment marked something important, not just for Marcus, but for all of them. The morning sun warmed Emma's face as she walked down Riverside Avenue with Nathan. The town had transformed in ways she never expected, where there had once been broken windows and graffiti, fresh paint and new glass sparkled. The hardware store's bell chimed as two Iron Brotherhood members emerged carrying lumber for the community center renovation. "Morning, Emma." "Nathan," one of them called out, tipping his head respectfully. Nathan waved back, no longer tense around the leather-clad bikers. "Hey, Tony. Working on the basketball court today?" "You bet, kid. Should be ready for that tournament next week." Emma squeezed Nathan's shoulder as they continued walking. It still amazed her how comfortable her son had become with their unlikely allies. Just months ago, he'd been terrified at the mere sight of a motorcycle. "Mom," Nathan said, pausing outside the diner. "Remember when we used to avoid coming downtown after dark?" Emma nodded, watching Mrs. Carlson serve coffee to a mix of townspeople and bikers through the window. "Things sure have changed." Inside, the diner buzzed with morning activity. Vincent sat at the counter discussing plans for a charity ride with the mayor. The proceeds would help rebuild the local youth center. Emma couldn't help but smile at the sight. The town's most prominent official and an Iron Brotherhood member sharing coffee and Danish like old friends. Emma. Maria, her old friend from the clinic, waved them over to her booth. "I saved you both a spot." As they settled in, Maria's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Did you hear? The Brotherhood is organizing a summer festival. They've already raised enough money to bring in bands and set up carnival rides for the kids." "Who would have thought?" Emma mused, stirring sugar into her coffee. She watched Nathan pull out his notebook. He'd been documenting the town's transformation in his stories. You know what's really amazing? Nathan looked up from his writing. Nobody leaves their doors locked anymore. Remember how scared everyone was when the Brotherhood first showed up? Emma remembered all too well the fear, the uncertainty, the whispered warnings from concerned neighbors. Now those same neighbors were working alongside the bikers, planning community events, and sharing meals at the diner. Through the window, she spotted Marcus directing volunteers as they unloaded supplies for the community center. His injured arm was healing well, and his leadership had taken on a different quality. Less commanding, more collaborative. Children no longer ran from him. Instead, they gathered around, eager to help with whatever project he was working on. You did this, Mom, Nathan said quietly, following her gaze. When you saved Marcus, that night, you changed everything. Maria reached across the table and squeezed Emma's hand. He's right, you know. Your kindness started all of this. Emma felt warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the coffee. The town hadn't just rebuilt its buildings. It had rebuilt its spirit. Where there had once been division and fear, she now saw unity and hope. The Brotherhood, once viewed as dangerous outsiders, had become integral members of their community. Looking around the diner at the mixed crowd of townspeople and bikers, Emma felt a profound sense of peace. She was stronger now, more confident in her instincts. That night on the stormy road, she'd followed her heart despite her fears. Every day since, had proven that compassion, even in the face of uncertainty, could lead to extraordinary changes. The town square buzzed with excitement as strings of lights twinkled overhead in the early evening sky. Motorcycles lined the streets, their chrome gleaming in the golden sunset. The Iron Brotherhood had organized a community barbecue, and the aroma of grilled burgers and hot dogs filled the air. Emma stood near the refreshment table, watching the scene unfold before her. Children darted between the leather-clad bikers, their laughter mixing with the sound of classic rock playing through speakers. Some of the Brotherhood members had set up carnival games, and cheers erupted whenever someone won a prize. Can you believe this? Maria appeared beside her, holding a paper plate loaded with potato salad. A year ago, if someone had told me, we'd be having a town party with the Iron Brotherhood, I would have thought they were crazy. Emma smiled, watching Nathan help younger kids at the ring toss booth. Sometimes the craziest choices lead to the best outcomes. The music faded and Vincent stepped onto the makeshift stage. He tapped the microphone, drawing everyone's attention. Evening, folks, his gruff voice carried across the square. We're here tonight to celebrate something special. Not just peace in this town, but the power of second chances. The crowd grew quiet as Vincent continued. And there's one man who showed us what that really means. He gestured toward Marcus, who stood at the edge of the gathering. Bear. Marcus, come on up here, brother. Marcus made his way through the crowd, his usual intimidating presence softened by the slight smile on his face. Emma felt her chest tighten with emotion as she watched him climb the steps to the stage. This man, Vincent said, clapping Marcus on the shoulder, showed us that change is possible. He helped bridge the gap between our world and yours. He looked out at the townspeople. And it all started because one brave woman chose kindness over fear. Emma felt heat rise to her cheeks as heads turned in her direction. Marcus's eyes found hers in the crowd, and he nodded slightly, acknowledgement and gratitude in his expression. Marcus here is stepping up as our new chapter leader, Vincent announced. And his first order of business was setting up a scholarship fund for local kids. The money we raised from our charity rides this summer, $50,000, will help send 5 students to college next year. Applause erupted and Emma noticed tears in Mrs. Carlson's eyes. Her grandson would be one of those scholarship recipients. After the announcement, the celebration continued. Emma watched as Marcus moved through the crowd, stopping to chat with townspeople and Brotherhood members alike. He carried himself differently now. The dangerous edge was still there, but it was tempered by something else. Wisdom perhaps, or peace. Nathan approached her, cotton candy in hand. "Mom, did you see? Marcus got the whole club to sponsor my writing workshop idea for kids at the community center." "That's wonderful, honey." Emma hugged him close, remembering how frightened they'd both been that stormy night when she'd first brought Marcus home. As the evening progressed, families spread blankets on the grass, waiting for the fireworks display. Emma found a quiet spot near the gazebo, watching Marcus help a small girl adjust her paper crown from the carnival booth. His gentleness with the child spoke volumes about how far he'd come. The man, who had arrived in their lives as a wounded stranger, had transformed into someone else entirely. A protector, a leader, and most surprisingly, family. Emma felt a profound sense of pride, knowing she'd played a part in his journey. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, casting long shadows across the town square. Emma stood by the old oak tree, watching as the last of the partygoers helped stack chairs and clean up paper plates. The day's celebration had brought out the best in everyone. Marcus approached her, his leather vest now adorned with the patch marking him as chapter leader. Despite his imposing figure, children waved at him as they passed by, and he returned their greetings with warm smiles. "Quite a change from how they used to run when they saw me coming," he said, his voice carrying a hint of wonder. Emma nodded, remembering those early days. "You've earned their trust, Marcus. That's not something that comes easily in a small town like this." They watched as Mr. Henderson, the hardware store owner who'd once refused to serve Marcus, called out to him with a friendly wave. "Hey, Marcus, don't forget about tomorrow's council meeting. We need your input on the youth center renovations." "Wouldn't miss it," Marcus replied, then turned to Emma with a slight shake of his head. "Sometimes I still can't believe it. Me sitting on the town council." Emma smiled, noting how the tension that had once seemed permanently etched in his shoulders had melted away. "You've given them reason to believe in second chances." Across the square, Nathan was helping some younger kids pack up their carnival prizes. The teenager caught their eye and grinned, holding up a stuffed bear he'd won at the ring toss. He'd grown so much in the past months, not just in height, but in confidence. "The scholarship program was his idea, you know," Marcus said quietly. "Nathan mentioned how many kids here couldn't afford college. Got me thinking about all the good we could do with the money we used to waste on less worthy causes." A cool evening breeze rustled through the trees as they walked along the edge of the square. The string lights overhead twinkled to life, creating a warm glow that reminded Emma of fireflies on a summer night. "I remember when you first woke up on my couch," she said, chuckling at the memory. "I was terrified you'd bring nothing but trouble." "I did bring trouble," Marcus admitted, his expression turning serious. "But you never gave up on me, even when you had every reason to." They passed the newly renovated gazebo where the Iron Brotherhood had helped install a memorial garden. Fresh flowers bloomed around its base, planted by community members who'd once feared the very sight of a motorcycle. "The town's come alive again," Emma observed, watching as families strolled down the sidewalks, enjoying the peaceful evening. "It's like we all needed to learn the same lesson. That people can change. That trust is worth the risk." Marcus nodded, his eyes scanning the familiar streets that had become home. "I spent so many years thinking strength meant making others fear you. Turns out real strength is having the courage to change. A group of Iron Brotherhood members gathered near their bikes, preparing to head out. But unlike before, there was no tension in the air. No worried mothers hurrying their children inside. Instead, several townspeople stopped to chat with them, exchanging friendly words and waves. Emma watched this scene unfold, feeling a deep sense of contentment settle over her. The fear and uncertainty that had once clouded their lives had given way to something beautiful. A community united, stronger for having faced its prejudices and overcome them. Together, they stood in comfortable silence as the last rays of sunlight painted the sky. Witnesses to the remarkable transformation their town had undergone. The future stretched before them, full of possibility. I hope you like this story. Please share what's your favorite part of the story and where in the world you are watching from. Have a wonderful